Call this meeting to order, and it's February the 19th, a beautiful sunny day. We got the mountains behind us and the wind blowing. Oh, wait a minute, no, that's Jeremy. That's where Jeremy is, excuse me. Jeremy, we're glad to have you with us, and those mountains and that breeze back there does look good, and that sun out. Glad to have you with us. And I appreciate the coffee also. You might can't see it, but anyway. We have Jeremy with us today, but he's online, and the rest of us are here. So we appreciate everybody being here and everybody that's watching us online. We do thank you for being with us. So at this time, if everybody will please stand if they're able. And we'll call on Mayor Pro-Tem Buddy Fowler to lead us in a word of prayer.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's bow our heads. Our Father, we come to you today asking for your blessings on our people here. Father, we have some of our people in the country that is in dire need of your help and your comfort. The storm that's come in has got a lot of people homeless, a lot of people that are in need of different things. Father, through you all things are possible. We know, and we ask you to continue to reach out and bless them with your grace. Father, we also ask you to bless this council as we perform our duties in this workshop for the town of Surf City. Father, we also ask you to be with our military people that are overseas and those that are home with their families. Protect them and see them safely back. Father, we ask that you continue to bless this country of ours, help us mend, and move us forward. Father, we ask all these things in your most precious name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Ask Councilman Don Helms, he'll lead us in our pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right. Did Jody leave us?
Over on the other side.
Oh, okay. Jody had a birthday today, and it said 29 on the cake. I'm not exactly sure who figured that one up, but anyway, want to wish her a happy birthday. And so at this time, do we have an approval for the agenda, a motion?
I make a motion, we approve.
Second. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Everybody's in favor of it. Okay, the consent agenda. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, all approved. All right, now, we've got some people from Monteith here, and we're gonna have a town hall update, and I'll just let him go with it. All right.
Morning, everybody. Appreciate it, Mayor. Matt Britton, Project Manager, Monteith Construction. Before I give the quick update, we've got Clint Howell here, Director of Operations, checking up on us on site, making sure, we do show up to work and there is actually a building. So, yeah, Clint, I hope you're happy. No. Appreciate it. Always glad to be here. Quick update right now. Everything's going well despite the weather on the exterior. We were just talking beforehand. We're in a pretty fortunate spot on site as far as being dried in. We've got our glass and roofing all taken care of. So building's watertight with this weather. From the interior standpoint, if anyone's walked it here, we've got caseworks going in, we've got ceiling tile going in, the flooring is complete, we've got finished paint that's coming. It's working from the police side over to the town hall side. Those are kind of the big interior items that are going to happen. Punch list, vinyl base, some trim out, devicing out is going to be taking place in the next week or so. We are going to make a priority to take care of the town hall side after some conversations with Kyle and sequencing, getting everybody moved in here cleanly. We will make a priority on the town hall side. The radio signal testing, we will be started with that on Monday, so we are appreciative of kind of everyone's patience and understanding through that process. We'll be BFP will be on site Monday to start running their Cat 6 above head. But yeah, on the interior inspections, so, you know, we're going to bring John Burton out here, fire marshal, kind of get a courtesy walk and make sure there's no surprises as, you know, exit signs and emergency lighting. Exterior, I don't know if you guys have seen the bright red Monteith sign has been removed. The temp fencing on the front of the site's been taken down. Curb appeal, the entrance, the drive, the curb, and all that stuff we're working on it. We started this week. Hasn't gone as quickly as possible due to some weather, but we've also got our landscaping pre-installation meeting, so we'll be meeting with the civil engineer at 10 o'clock today, as well as the architects, kind of make sure landscaping's going to go in, so you'll start seeing plants, sod, all that kind of stuff in about 2 to 3 week window. Dumpster enclosure is going to be happening here on Monday, as well as the monument sign is going to start on Monday. We've got asphalt scheduled for 3/4. That's a pretty firm date right now. Over the winter time, you kind of want to make sure you get that date locked in. So 3/4, you'll see some blacktop in the parking lot and really start to see a finished exterior product. Overall, things are going very well. Contingency, as far as financially, we're sitting in a good spot here. Under budget, ahead of schedule. I hate to throw that out there casually, but those are both accurate right now. And we have a contractual completion of 4/28. We're looking at kind of getting you guys moved in and settled in first week of April is our plan here. So, like I said, our goal now is to finish cleanly and smoothly and kind of get you guys moved in without much of a punch list or a warranty. So, questions,
I
concerns?
do have one.
Yes, sir.
It's Dwight, Torres. So I have received several, I wouldn't say a bunch, but at least 2 communications from the community just behind there in
Yes, sir.
regards to doing something about maybe masking with some type of tall tree, bush. Are we looking into that? Is that being addressed? Are you aware?
Yes, so I spoke with the gentleman at the end of Marcel Lane, and I told him that once the exterior lighting gets turned on, that we would meet, that I would meet with him personally so that we can develop a plan beyond what's going in. You know, I explained to him some of the limitations because we have a large drainage swale back there that separates the wood picket fence on their property to our job site. And then from there, we have a very narrow rim around that stormwater pond that we can't jeopardize the slope on that and potential erosion by doing plantings on that very fragile area. So we're gonna have to be creative. However, how creative we can get, we certainly will, to try and do what we can. But I have not promised anything with it, but do understand that there is a concern.
Okay, thank you.
And, you know, to jump onto that, during today's, the timing of the question is pretty good. We have a 10 o'clock meeting. We'll have the architect there. We'll have our landscaper there. And oftentimes, you know, we can ask for just, hey, this is coming down the pipeline potentially. If you have any suggestions as far as economical or what have you, so I'll be happy to bring
That'd
that
be
up
great.
at our
Thank
10
you.
o'clock. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
And we might have some additional opportunity to work with Jones Onslow to see if we can get some shielding on the backside of those lights. But he was understanding that, you know, we don't know until those get turned on. So once they do, then we'll link back up and try to figure
Okay,
something.
thanks, Kyle.
You're welcome.
Great. Anything else?
No.
Anybody got any more questions for it?
When do you think you'll have heated?
We have heating currently.
Oh, you do?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
We have conditioned air fully.
Okay.
Any other questions? I appreciate what you're doing.
Yes, sir.
Really the first time I've been involved with something that has been as much on time with the construction of anything that we've ever done. I appreciate it.
Sincerely. Yeah. Appreciate it. We take that to heart. So, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Good job.
Enjoy your weekend, guys. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
And yeah, I will make it at 10 o'clock. Matt? You will not? I will not, so. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Southeastern Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. And we got Mr. Nathan here, or no, he's with Nathan. I forgot what your name was.
My name is Nathan. Yes, sir. Nathan
okay,
Slaughter.
all right.
With ESP Associates, I was going to give a briefing on the regional hazard mitigation plan of which the town is a part and needs to adopt. So I believe I've got a little slideshow that Mr. Horn is pulling up, and I will walk you through what that plan is, what it's about, and the importance of it, and that sort of thing, and answer any questions y'all might have. While they pull that up, I'm the project manager for the update of the regional plan. It is a 4-county plan, which I'll talk about in just a minute here, but 4-county plan that includes New Hanover, Brunswick, Pender and Onslow counties, and all of the municipalities within those counties. So it's a large document. And that's one of the reasons I don't have a copy of that plan here, because if I printed it out, it would be about that tall, and we would all probably fall asleep trying to read it. But it is an important plan. And next slide.
1 minute. You said 4 counties. What were they again?
Pender, Onslow, Brunswick, and New Hanover,
Okay.
and every municipality within, so over 30 municipalities.
Thank
So
you.
Yes, sir. What is hazard mitigation? If we looked in the dictionary, the definition says to cause to become less harsh or hostile. But from an emergency management perspective, anytime we're talking about hazard mitigation, we're trying to look at what we can do while we're not being impacted by a disaster to reduce the impact of that next one. That's what I usually say, but I feel like we're always in a disaster these days with COVID-19. There's flooding going on right now, but trying to reduce the impact of that next event is what hazard mitigation is. And we do that through planning. It is required by the federal government to do this type of planning through the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000. That's what piece of legislation requires this type of planning and this type of plan in order to be eligible for those 3 pots of money there, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Program, the BRIC program, which is a new program, and the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program. In order to remain eligible for that funding, we have to have this type of plan in place. And just real quickly, that's money that we use to buy out repetitively flooded properties or to elevate properties that need to go above the flood elevation. So it's important, and most people do this type of planning because they want to remain eligible for that funding, and that's why it's so important. There's all the participating jurisdictions. It's a bunch of them. It was quite a coordination effort that we participated in, but we got it done. Like I said, the plan is a very lengthy document, but it does cover everybody, and all of these communities will be adopting the plan as well. The project task, we go through a planning process. We look at our risk, what are the hazards we're planning for, and what can we do about those hazards. We look at what's our capacity as a town or a city to do anything about it. That's through the capability assessment. And then that section 4, the mitigation strategy, is where we lay out what are the plans, policies, and procedures, the activities that we want to implement that'll help us reduce the impact of the next storm. So that's the mitigation strategy. And then there's a section on the plan about how we maintain the plan and implement it over time. And then just the documentation of the entire effort is the last step there. Project schedule. We got started about 1.5 years ago on this, I believe, and we stayed on track even through COVID, which was impressive. We got a lot of the planning done before that with all of the municipalities and all the other stakeholders. We had large meetings, a couple of them throughout the process. We had a pretty extensive public outreach step in there as well. We had 3 public meetings and 1 online public meeting that we just completed. So we did reach out to the public and got good public feedback. We're at the end of the process now. The plan is sitting at FEMA for their review, which is the final step, and they usually don't have anything too major for us, and they actually tell us to go ahead and work with communities to start adopting the plan. This just emphasizes the need to continue this type of planning since the last plan update. This is a plan that's been in place many years, and it has to be updated every 5 years. Since the last plan update, we've been through all this. So it just demonstrates the need that we need to continue this type of important work and making sure that we're trying to reduce our vulnerability to our communities and trying to increase our resilience as we move forward. This is the list of hazards that the plan covers. You wonder what's in the hazard mitigation plan. It's all of these natural hazards. One thing we did a little bit different this time is expand the scope of the plan to include man-made technological hazards as well, which we think is important. FEMA only requires we look at natural hazards, but we expanded the scope, and we do incorporate other hazards such as cyber attacks, terrorism. We did include infectious disease in the plan this time around, so that, just recognizing that that's a hazard that could impact us and starting to think about what are the steps we can do to reduce those hazard impacts. Just to boil down what is mitigation into 2 steps, we are in a community that has existing structures in it, infrastructure, roads, bridges, buildings, this building. Some of those buildings are in harm's way. Trying to figure out what we can do to reduce the impact of storms or hazard events to those facilities is hazard mitigation. But also the second step is thinking, as we continue to build and how we build and where we build is important as well. We don't want to be increasing our vulnerability by building in places where we might not want to be building. That's hazard mitigation as well. So there's mitigation of existing structures, but also thinking about how we're building and developing over time and making sure we're not increasing our vulnerability. And this is, when we get to the mitigation action part of the plan, these are the types of things that you'll see in there. I won't go through all of this. This is a lot to digest, but there's basically 6 categories of hazard mitigation techniques to cover a pretty broad spectrum of activities. But like I said, really the most important ones and the ones FEMA really funds the most are those buyouts and elevations of flood-prone property. So those are the mitigation techniques. There's a section in the plan specifically for Surf City called the Mitigation Action Plan. I believe it's section 9 of the plan if you have a chance to look at that document. This is where it lays out the projects, the programs, the activities that the city wants to undertake to be covered under the plan, but also to try to reduce their vulnerability. Each one of those actions, I believe there's probably about 30 of them in the plan. Each one of them has all of that information associated with it. It spells out what the action is, who's responsible for it, how much it might cost, and then we need to provide an update on what has taken place with implementing that action since the last plan update 5 years ago, so that we currently keep the plan up to date and in place and update the plan as well. And like I said, there's a section specifically for Surf City that has about 35 actions in it. We did public outreach. Like I said, we did 3 public meetings across the region. It's a pretty large region, so we wanted to spread out and make sure we covered it pretty well. We did an online survey for the plan and had close to 800 responses, which is pretty large. If you've ever, you guys have done public meetings a lot. We don't have 800 people show up to those usually. If we do, that's a big deal. But that just shows, that this region has been impacted by disasters recently, and they're curious about this stuff and want to weigh in. So, I think that was a success in terms of getting people to fill out the survey. We did an online public meeting here at the end of the process as well, and we had about 100 people signed up for that online public meeting. The next steps, the plans are being presented to boards like yourselves across the region right now. The current plan expires in April of this year, so it's coming up. We're trying to get ahead of that to make sure we adopt this new plan before the old one expires. Like I said, the plan is at FEMA now, and we'll be getting their blessing that the plan is approvable here shortly, I believe. But you all will be adopting the plan, hopefully, if there's no issues with it, at your next meeting in March. And then you'll be covered by the plan for another 5 years. And we'll come back and do this all again in 5 years if there's no issues with it. That's kind of my end of my summary there. I just wanted to give y'all an update. There's my information. If there's any questions or if you want to follow up on anything directly with me, you can. I know Mr. Horn can answer questions as well as Kyle can. He was involved to some extent also. But Are there any questions about the plan, the process, or what's required of Surf City at this time?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. Oh, shouldn't be pushing buttons. All right, thank y'all.
Thanks, Nick.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we have some advisory board appointments, and the ones that has been presented to us is John Thomas for the Board of Adjustment and Chris Huff for Parks and Recreation. Is there any other ones?
No, sir. We have no other applications on file at this time. What I'm asking today is for a consensus to place the two appointments on the March 2nd consent agenda for official appointment.
Okay, do I have a consensus from everybody, okay? All right, will be put on there. Okay, Parks and Recreation Foundation outline presentation.
Morning, Brian.
Got it up. All right, so back in 2019, June of 2019, this council approved this plan. This was our comp plan for our department. Within that plan, one of the things that was recommended and identified was that our department starts a foundation. That foundation helps with funding other recreational facilities. It helps with funding programs, and it's very beneficial for a department like ours. So what we did is we started the process. We went through, and as you see, we've got an outline set up, and which was approved by the advisory committee. The advisory committee went through, set up a mission statement. We got objectives for the foundation. This would be a 501c3. There will be 9 to 15 board members, and we're looking at trying to go through the appointment process. So we're bringing it to the council more for a consensus to move forward so that we can, the advisory committee can start to build the board. At that point, once we get to the point of having recommendations for the board, we would present it back to the council for approval. Again, you know, not to go through and read everything that's in the outline, you've got it in front of you, but it's also, I've provided an application which shows you, which is very similar to what we have with the advisory committees. We did critique it a little bit so that it fit more for this foundation. It does have the life cycle for this is 2 years for a board member unless they have been reappointed or they desire to continue. The foundation, to kind of give you an example in other departments that I've worked in, that foundation's been really well with a lot of capital needs. So when you have a grant, grants require matching a lot of time, and that matching can be pulled from either our general fund or whether or not we do a capital improvement fund, or you can seek funding through the foundation. A successful foundation is going to do fundraising. They're gonna really work towards trying to get reaching out and finding donations. You know, we've got some interest now with the current project that we have on doing some donations. Nothing's final, obviously, until we get this in place. It does offer somebody who's willing or wanting to donate a substantial amount of money. It gives them that opportunity or that little safeguard that, you know, that money's going to this foundation. That foundation is going to secure that money and ensure that it's going towards what they want it to go towards. So I guess at this point, what I'm asking is one, for consensus to go ahead and allow the advisory committee to move forward with building the board, and then we will present this back to the council with a recommended board and approval. And of course, open for any questions that you may have.
We just need a consensus on that, is that right?
Consensus for Mr. Mayor to move forward with that, yes.
Do I have a consensus on that? Okay. Move forward,
I appreciate it.
not backwards. You got anything else?
I guess I got the next thing on the agenda. So
Oh, you have, okay. Yeah. In fact, you're gonna be up there a while. Go ahead.
I'll try to make it as brief as I can, but I want to make sure. That's just the application. Jason, we can go ahead and go to the PowerPoint for, if you want to, the mayor would like to move forward to the paving.
Yes.
All right. So to kind of take us back a little bit again, we've been a long ways right in the last 2-3 years with paving. When I first came on, paving was done in the fashion of patching, and we were doing small sections throughout the town. It was very difficult to keep up. So we moved forward a couple of years ago on just trying to focus on paving some of the really rough areas, as well as the areas that are heavily traveled. So, in some of the recent projects that we've completed, just to kind of give you a recap, J.H. Spatz Road, that was a project that we coordinated with Waterside. We were able to pave that. I know we had a lot of citizens going back and forth to what's community center / town hall at this time, and we were able to get that project done. Then we had a project that we coordinated with NCDOT, which was on North Shore Drive between Roland Avenue and Greensboro Avenue. This was a project that we had worked again with DOT as they were going the opposite direction. We wanted to make sure that that road was in pretty rough shape, if you remember, especially out in front of this center and down towards Spinnakers. And then we had the large post-Florence project, which was, I don't know if it was the largest project, but I'm pretty certain it's one of the largest paving projects that this town's done that I'm aware of. This project was able to pave North Shore Drive, Mecklenburg Avenue, Craven, Jones, Lenore, Pender, Neptune, Broadway, 5th Street, 9th Street, North Shore Drive, or North Topsail Drive, and Easy Street. That completed that entire section, and this council was, it was very supportive of moving forward on that, even though it was quite a undertaken for the town financially. Then we had some other projects that were coordinated with NCDOT that we did with, let me get it up because I can't see all the way over there. At Roland Avenue on both the mainland and the island side, we worked well and partnered with DOT, and they helped us with Kinston Avenue, South Shore Drive, Raleigh Avenue, High Point Avenue, Kinston Avenue, and then of course they opened up the new bridge. These were all substantial projects for us because it was, DOT didn't have to do a lot of these, and they were very gracious with helping us out with those projects. We have set up a capital improvement plan which outlines some of our paving recommendations for moving forward. And some of those recommendations, this year we put actually $90,000 in that, which You know, that's been the last couple of years we've worked off of 90,000 except for the post-Florence project. We are projected and will be requesting in the years to come that in 21, 22, and then 22, 23, as you see the increments. That's kind of our goal, that's our target, that's what's been put in the CIP. So what else we've done is, did I move? If it'll stop there. So we've now started to move towards getting this pavement condition survey. The pavement condition survey went out, or the RFQ went out January 5th. This was actually put together by Amy Kimes, and we had responses that were due on the 29th of January. There were 5 companies that were interested in this project. We reviewed the company information, and we have identified the contractor that we would like to proceed with, and we've begun negotiations and getting the details on as far as what kind of expenses we're looking at. This project, if we move forward, once it's underway, will take approximately 14 weeks. This will help us identify road inventory, identify issues, whether it's cracking, patching, surface deformation, surface defects. It helps with estimates on project costs for some of these roads. It helps us with recommendations on treatments, on how we're going to handle each one of these roads, and it helps with the condition ratings, and it provides us some other reports as we work with them on things that we would like to see from this company. So that brings us to really where I'm at today. To kind of continue the trend, we want to continue to get a lot of these major roads that we have that I consider major roads for the town paved, and North Topsail Drive is between Roland and what I call surf condos, but all the way where it bends around to Shell. We want to focus on that area, and as you see in some of these pictures, there's some transverse cracking. There's a lot of damage on the edges, which are holding water. We've got potholes that have been repaired over and over and over. There's an intersection that was there that used to be a 4-way intersection, and that intersection has, taken a beating as well. This is one of our heavily traveled roads, especially during the summer now that you have the bridge and we've rerouted some of the traffic. So this project, we reached out for 3 paving companies, Onslow, CM Mitchell, and ST Wooten. And obviously, right now, Onslow is the low bid for 118, and this was a little bit higher than what we had projected with the 90,000, and that's due because of the transverse cracking that's taking place. I've actually contacted Chad Kimes with NCDOT. I've spoke with Amy Kimes, who's also very knowledgeable when it comes to paving. I've spoke with Mr. Price, and we've all kind of come to an agreement on trying to fill the cracking so that we're not bridging that cracking so that it doesn't surface again. The cracking will never go away, but what we can do is slow it down, and we can try to get at least more years out of the paving than what we would get if we just go and do an overlay. So what will end up happening is the recommendation would be to go with Onslow. They're going to put an 1.5 inch overlay once they fill the cracking. The cracking is going to be filled with a sand-based asphalt that will help kind of keep it from when you go in and you have a crack and you've got bridged over, that crack starts to surface. This buys us a little bit more time. This is a little less costly than the ultimate solution, which we don't want to go towards, is having to start all over. We did identify, we did submit a request. ECS did some testing on it. It does have a fair amount of subgrade. There's been a lot of overlay that's been done on that road over the years. So, you know, we're wanting to go ahead and move forward. That would cover that entire section. And I thought I had I skipped through it.
Chad, wasn't a lot of that cracking due to lines put under the road?
Yes, sir. So it was, and I think Price helped me with identifying, there was some water lines and some sewer lines that were bored.
They were bored lines and then they
Yeah,
started
so
cracking there.
And what that does is it creates a void in
Right.
each one of those, and it begins to sink. I was trying to find the map, Jason, on there. I had it.
It's right there, Chad.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, so this, to get back to that, it did, it's kind of like riding down, it was just a bump,
Right.
all the way down. That, to my knowledge, and again, talking with Chad Kimes, he's dealt with it a lot longer than I have, it's never gonna go away without completely removing everything
Without the redoing.
and starting over. So, you know, my conversation with him was, if this was your road, what would you do? And this is what he said that he would do. You know, I don't want to, you know, go to that extreme. I think that we can get, he's projecting we can get 10 years, but again, this is, who knows what storm-wise. Onslow Paving and Grading is recommending it and saying that they can get 10 to 15 years out of it before we start seeing that cracking, but then you don't never know what weather. If we get ice and we get a lot of rain like what we've been getting, it can kind of shrink that timeline a little bit more. But this would take us, as you see,
Are they gonna grind,
there will
taking away?
won't be any grinding. So what'll happen is they'll first go through, and each one of those transverse cracking, they're gonna fill it. And then they're gonna go with an overlay. At the intersections, they're gonna taper it off into the intersections so that you don't have that bump as you go over the intersections. There'll be a smooth transition. They'll go into, for instance, Goldsboro. They'll go around the corner. It'll be about 30 feet onto Goldsboro in both directions. And as you go down, each intersection will do the same. But it should be a lot better road driving than what it is right now. And I know that that's been a lot of people in the community is, I've heard it from him, and we're trying to address this, and this is kind of where we're at. So it would take us down here where Roland, when DOT did their project, they did come into North Topsail a little bit. So they're gonna connect at that point here, and then up where Shell is, you'll notice that off of North New River, they came around and there's some new pavement or newer pavement. So they're gonna tie in to that area. So that helps us with completing this full length. One of my worries when I first went in was that if we were gonna be able to do this whole length, I thought we were gonna have to figure out a section or do half of it. So we were very fortunate that the bids at least got close. So what the plan is to get to the, I don't know if this, yeah, is to go ahead, we've got 90,000 that's budgeted. We have money to make that difference up within the Powell bill. That will probably have to come out of the, a portion of it out of the sidewalks, which we have 50,000 for sidewalks. I am working on a project now, or bids, to try to get some sidewalks and everything, but to me this was the priority. That's my recommendation. Obviously the council has your own thoughts on how you would like to proceed with this.
What is the timeframe, Chad, of when it would start and be completed?
So what I've tried to do with all of these paving projects is to keep it out of, or have them done before what I call April 1st. So that is the timeline at this point. I've talked with Onslow. Obviously, it's weather permitting. So we really need to weather to cooperate the rest of the year. So it's with them doing an overlay and filling. I can't imagine it's going to take a couple of weeks, but we can. I'll try to make sure that I keep that timeline. As soon as I get it down, I'll send it to Mr. Brewer, and he can share that with you guys. But yep. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I guess what I'm asking is the blessing from the council to move forward on this project, and obviously we'll plan for a new one for next year.
Have a consensus for him to move forward.
Yeah, I've got a question though, real quick. Can you go back to the survey slide? And while you're trying to get there, that survey, is that?
You talking about which survey?
There was a request for a quote, I believe.
Okay,
that
with
was
the
at
map.
the beginning of January, and you got I guess the suspense date
Yes.
was the end of January, right? So you've got that in already?
Yes, so this is the pavement condition survey.
Yeah.
So different. Yes, so this is, we've already got the responses from 5 companies. We took and actually reviewed all 5 proposals. We've identified one of the companies out of that. We're working with them on negotiations, make sure that what they're presenting or what they're proposing is going to fit within our budget. So as soon as that's done, then we'll be into that.
You don't have a cost yet associated with the survey?
We do not have a cost yet.
The second question is, that's for all roads across the city?
That is for all roads across the town.
Across the
And
town,
that,
Yeah.
where we go in the past, what we've been doing is identifying roads, almost by eye. Basically, hey, this is a major road, it's damaged, let's get to testing. What that's gonna provide us, it's gonna say, hey, here's all your roads, here's what condition those roads are in, and this is what our recommendation of what the priority level where you should pave this, so that we're not sitting here guessing.
No, I got it.
I'm not saying that it's a guesswork. We all know which roads are bad, and we all know which ones we need to do, but that provides us a little bit more information.
Okay.
So,
That answers it. Thank you.
okay. All right. Any other questions?
Anybody got any more questions for you? Okay.
Thank you, Chad.
All right. Thank you.
Sir. Yeah, I think this survey of our streets is something we've been needing for a while anyway.
It's comprehensive.
All right, beautification and appearance name change request. Who's doing this one?
That request has come in on behalf of the Beautification and Appearance Committee Chairman, Mr. Jim Conway. He submitted a letter for recommendation. The advisory committee came to a consensus that they would like to change the name, as you can see from the submittal of the email from Mr. Conway. That name change would take a consensus of council in order to amend that advisory committee's name.
That falls under Councilman Shugarts, that liaison for that, I believe.
Correct.
Let him see, get his opinion on it.
You got something you want to add, Jeremy?
Yes, I have spoken with the committee, and they suggested they want to change the identity a little bit, keep basically the roots of the advisory board. What they did was they added an enhancement to it. I spoke with Councilman Fowler, so they needed to come up with something, bring it back to council, and after about 6 months, this is what they came up with. So I'm okay with it. I know that we're talking with them about being possibly incorporated into the Parks and Recreation Board, but they'd like to have this identity with having enhancement added to their committee name, if you guys so see it.
Okay. Buddy, you're with the Recreation Department. You got anything to add?
I don't have any problem with adding that word to that committee name and call it Beautification Enhancement Committee. I'm fine with it. And if we do bring them in under Parks and Rec, as a subcommittee, that'll still transfer over.
Okay, do we actually need a vote on that? You got something to say?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do
Just
we
a
need a vote on
consensus.
that or consensus?
Just a consensus and we can
Consent.
change it.
Okay. All right. You got it? All right. Demo contract?
Yes,
Have we
sir.
actually got one?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Good.
This, as you know, as I've kept everybody in the loop in regards to the demos of the Old Town Hall building and then the Old Ward building. We put this out initially and really felt that we needed to separate the projects out to get better costs associated with them, mainly because one of the projects could be done without having a general contractor's license or a $30,000 project threshold. So we put it back out for additional bids. As you can see, what's highlighted in yellow are the low bids that came in. Old Town Hall coming in at $53,200. That is a turnkey project. They will demo the structure and then lay gravel down once it's been completed. Same thing with the Old Ward building. That came in at $14,000. So it'd be our recommendation to move forward so that we can award contracts and get this project moving forward. Supplemental to this, we did have to have an asbestos survey completed. As I had indicated to council, both of those buildings do contain certain levels greater than 1%, which does require abatement. So we have already turned that around, requested proposals back on the abatement side. Those are due next Friday, the 26th. Time is of the essence on that contract and execution, which was stated in that request. So we have one in. We'll be waiting for a couple additional. Good news is that that abatement process is not as fiscally burdensome for the town as initially thought. We hope that we should be able to get something in within a reasonable number and then get that project completed. So we're moving on, trying to get this done as quick as possible, and the demo contract will just be contingent on when the abatement process will be completed. So.
But we're still not sure about a date.
No, all I can say is ASAP, but we will have, I will have the demo contractor teed up to move in literally the day after, hopefully, we get the abatement process completed. And again, it's not a huge project for them. Some interior in the Old Town Hall within the elevator tile, and a couple of offices had some linoleum flooring, and the glue that held that down had asbestos in it. And then the exterior eaves of the Old Ward building is what contained the asbestos levels for the abatement. So no interior work. And then as Matt had mentioned, our priority is to try and transition community development and emergency management out of the Old Ward building as soon as possible. So.
Okay. All righty. Contract for planning services.
Did we get a motion and a?
I'll need a motion to move forward with the demo contract.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Satellite annexation request. And this is from Share to Table.
We've got the, I think the comp plan is the next one, Mr.
The
Mayor.
what?
The comp plan, Amy's comp plan, contract for planning services.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. At the bottom down there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
On January 1st of 2021, Chapter 160D of the North Carolina General Statutes became effective. This new land use law consolidates current city and county enabling statutes for development regulations. Towns previously received their authority under Chapter 160A, while the county received theirs from 153A. As a part of this update, the legislation requires certain documents to be current or updated. This past fall, the town revised our current zoning ordinances to reflect the changes from 160A to 160D. To continue practicing zoning, the town is required to have an up-to-date land use or comprehensive plan. The town updated their current land use plan in 2005. Since that time, the town has seen significant growth and has incorporated into its limits many of the future land use areas. This growth has brought new opportunities and challenges for the town, as portions of the areas of growth were not shown in the current plan. The proposed update to the land use plan will provide the vision for the town for the next 20 years while meeting the requirements of the CAMA land use plan and the 160D legislation. This plan will help direct policy as well as identify needed changes in the existing zoning ordinance. It is anticipated that once we finish this, we will update our zoning ordinances to be better in line with the comprehensive land use plan. In December of 2020, staff provided a request for proposals for applicants interested in working with the town to create the comprehensive land use plan. The town received 4 proposals, which were then scored to determine the best candidate for the plan. The plan's costs ranged from $43,500 to $145,000. Based on our scoring criteria, Insight Planning and Development was chosen. Staff worked with Insight to negotiate a contract that fit within our current budget while maintaining the portions of the proposal that held the most interest for the town. Insight provided a detailed list of deliverables, an online public input tool, as well as in-person public input, and a timeline of approximately 13 months. Through discussions with Insight, a portion of the stakeholder meetings were reduced to include both planning board and council instead of holding separate meetings. Discussions were also led to the removal of a portion of the urban design transportation element. These changes allowed us to stay within the budget. The revised timeline also decreased to approximately 10 months. This time frame does not include the final review time by CAMA for certification. In your packet, you have the original Insight Planning and Development proposal, the revised scope of work, and the proposed contract. And I am asking to be able to move forward with the proposed contract with Insight Planning and Development. Any questions?
I'll make that motion, we'll go ahead and move forward with it, because we need to get on the same
Yeah,
level
did
with
you review it?
160D, I believe it is, to 160A.
I think that it needs to be reviewed first
Well,
by,
just subject to town attorney. You can make the motion subject to town attorney, final review. That-
Right.
You
same
can
with
make a motion subject to,
Yeah.
okay.
I would do
I'll
that.
second that
All right.
motion.
That motion you made, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I
Second.
second.
All right, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay. Anybody opposed, same thing? Motion carried. All right. Now we're on satellite annexation request, right? You got that?
Yes, sir. Stephanie, is this one you typically don't handle, or? you want me to
I'm
go?
sorry, my computer's quit.
Okay.
Your computer quit.
So, before you, go ahead.
I can handle it, I'm sorry. The town received a annexation request on behalf of Share the Table for Ms. Dawn Ellis regarding the property at the corner of Perkins Drive and Highway 17. As you'll previously remember, the town moved forward with a resolution to support a sewer-only customer at this location, as they are not located within the town limits. They are now requesting to annex in to the town limits. Mr. Brewer, you have further comments?
Are we gonna do this annexation, how will the sewer affect this annexation?
So this is, this we talked about this property when they came in as a sewer-only customer, and the concern that I had expressed with the annexation portion of it was directly tied to the non-exempt status and really the structure in which we provide services for sewer-only customers outside or extra jurisdictional. So if the council recalls, we established rates to be able to show that we're not losing money on certain applications. You were able to make a decision on other projects, specifically Tractor Supply, which was already in the town of Surf City, to be a sewer only, because we have language in our land use plan that guides the decision in which council can make based on job creation, things like sales tax that would come to the town. Ultimately, those benefits outweighing the enterprise side of this and the utility delivery side of it to where we can offset any potential losses through some of those general fund revenues. So this request, to my understanding, for the annexation is going to be directly tied towards being able to utilize the town's development regulations, which is the desire of share the table. So with that being said, I think it's a difficult decision to make as the town to bring in nonprofit applications that are not on our water system as well as sewer. I would recommend that the town consider not approving the annexation because we immediately would be operating on a net loss.
How much?
It would be basically, we charge double for extra jurisdictional sewer. This would be right there. I don't know exactly what the loss figure would be on the utility side of it. Bryce, I don't know if you have that number with you, but that would be the reasoning of decision making on this application.
And it probably would not be that great an amount on this, but are we setting a precedent?
Well, I think you will, yes.
You know, so if a big complex come in out there, you know, that had a high sewer bill, then we couldn't afford to tell them that they're gonna have to pay the higher rate.
Correct.
Right?
And that's correct. And it was really the guidance from the land use plan that we were able to use, and this application would not be consistent with that policy language within that plan, where I carried forward a favorable recommendation for a sewer-only customer with the Tractor Supply application.
Right.
Yeah, my only concern is to know the exact amount, not exact, but rough figure, and to see if, you know, if that could be based on what they do for the community, which is a lot.
Oh, I know. I mean,
Yeah, I'd like to, before I'd make a vote on that, I'd like to know what that is.
Yeah, I'm not, you know, and I'm all for doing it for them, but we've got to look for setting a precedent.
Yeah.
For bigger stuff. Mr. Eads.
It wouldn't set a legally binding precedent, but you certainly, politically, people could come back and say, well, you did it for them, why aren't you doing it for us?
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Now, could they agree, would it help if they agreed to pay, or can they agree to pay the
higher rate?
Expanded rate?
Not if they're part of the town, no, you have to charge everyone the same rate. They could donate that differential to the town as a town donation, but not as part of the sewer bill, because that's a discrepancy in the same class of people.
Yeah, I'd love to find a way to help them.
Oh, absolutely.
That's for sure. But we've got to be careful for future.
Yeah, the only reason I'm wanting to consider it is because they're a non-for-profit and for
Oh, yeah,
what
and
they
they
do.
do
I'm
a lot of good.
I'm for, and I'm sure if we can speak to them to figure out how to mitigate that loss, it could easily come through a sponsorship. Someone that sponsors might be able to pay the difference to ensure we're not in a loss, but I'd like to help them if possible.
And for process-wise, this is just for consensus to move it to council meeting?
Yep.
Is that correct?
It'd be to instruct the clerk to certify the petition, right?
Correct.
So we can provide some of that information, have a conversation with the applicant.
Yep.
Again, it's the service provided, I think, aside, it's the way that I have to look at it. But we can provide that back to you and see what sort of contractual obligation or agreement we can put forward. But I would just need to make sure that any difference, if that's the way the council would like to look at this, that difference be able to be funneled back into the enterprise fund as opposed to general fund, because then we have an offset of all ratepayers paying the difference on that. So those would be the parameters in which I would be looking at for any sort of reaction to this.
I think that's fair.
Well, maybe you and Brian could get together and see if there's any way that we can do it, but, and then.
I'm pretty confident that you can't, if they're a town resident, they have to be treated on par with everyone else. The only reason you can charge the higher rate is because they're outside of the town limits. And those outside of the town limits, unless you can show a direct cost by providing that service, all must be charged the same as well.
I'm like you, Mayor, I don't want to set a precedent that's going to harm us 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road, and the town getting a lawsuit or whatever because of this. I would like to help them, but we can't do this if we're setting some type of precedent or anything. I'm in agreement with Kyle.
Okay.
I'll also agree with our town manager and attorney. I just think that, this whole year we've been talking about consistency, and I think we need to still stay on that plan of being consistent.
Okay.
And I've spoken with the project representatives, and I told them, this is how I look at this, and they certainly understand that. So I'm sure they'll appreciate any sort of additional consideration to offset or mitigate what a potential loss would be.
Right. Buddy, you got anything?
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
I'd love to help them if we can, but we don't, we have a lot of land out that way that's wet, unbuildable without sewer. And I'm sure there will be other requests coming in if we do something,
Right. Just have to be careful.
Be
It's easier to set a
careful, and
precedent.
I don't know how we can, I don't know what more, building wise, that our zone is different from Pender County. That would be something that Kyle can talk with them to see what to do. But if there's any way we can help them, and still stay, what I call solvent and consistent, I'll be for it. But otherwise, I think we need to look at it hard and strong.
Okay. Anybody got anything else? Jeremy, you got anything you want to say? Okay. All right. Well, now, are we ready?
Yes, sir.
Paid parking.
Yes, sir.
Could I address the board before briefly?
Just information. Yeah, I understand that, but we're in a meeting, so you certainly have to go through the mayor or the town manager prior to the meeting. Thank you. Well,
this is based on the
I understand that, but we can't just jump up.
I don't know the protocol, so I'm asking.
You just state your request to the mayor, he's the chair of the meeting, and we'll.
Okay, this is,
Pleasant Cove.
is this the Robert Street? Okay. I think. All right. Where's he at?
Thank you.
Okay, before we get started on the actual part of paid parking, I think Kyle has got something that he wants to present that I think will take care of your stuff, Ally, so you won't even have to worry about it. This is Robert Street that she's here about, so
Yes, sir.
you want to go ahead and,
Yeah, so, obviously, we've had quite a bit of dialogue internally, in regards to the Robert Street right-of-way in which, the town, has taken over, through active council, to establish, parking that's tied to our federal Army Corps project.
Just for clarity, the town has accepted the public dedication on the plat.
Okay, thank you.
right, so we do, in other words, we actually own that street, right?
Well, the public owns it. It's a
Or the public owns
it's a
the
public
property,
street.
yeah. But anyway, go ahead.
So, listening, understanding the concerns from Pleasant Cove neighborhood, the town is going to continue to evaluate this, bring the property owners in to discuss it. And this is going to be delayed for this year, but understanding that the town is going to look at every options to be able to move forward, and also having mitigating factors in place. I think that that's an approach that we can all get together on. I was going to send out 70-some letters tomorrow, or excuse me, this afternoon. The letter is written because I want to make sure every property owner in there gets that. To help them understand that yes, we do understand that this is something that we all need to look at. We cannot jeopardize a federal Army Corps project over it, and the protections in which that project is going to provide may help in some of the additional concerns. So if there's timing associated with it, on putting sand on the beach, on that 50-year protection level, etc., those are some of the things that we want to talk about, and make sure we're all on the same page. So I couldn't get that out as soon as I would have liked to, but the letter is written, and we will be sending those out, just to let you know that we will be sort of, I don't want to say delaying it inevitably, but delaying it at least probably until next year, because we don't really think that we're going to have the time to have this prepared for the upcoming season. But we do have to validate parking and access through the Federal Beach Nourishment Project. Those are the major concerns of the town in moving forward with any parking on South Shore. The idea of that is born in the minimum requirements of the federal project. So we will continue with that. We will establish a line of communication with everybody to make sure that we're on the same page moving forward, certainly understanding and respecting the concerns of the community. So please look out for that, and then future opportunities that we can get together and start looking at this once the town has the necessary information from a surveying and engineering standpoint, so that we can start looking at options for mitigation. Mr. Mayor, that's what I have on the Robert
Right.
Street stuff.
I just wanted her to understand that you'll have plenty of time later on to come in and present whatever you want to
And
present.
that's what we were asking for.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mr. Brewer and I had talked about it last week, and I see he's jumped on it, as he usually does, in his usual excellent way. So that is what we want, to just have some time to just
Right.
tell you our concerns. So
Okay.
we're very satisfied with that.
We will. You'll be getting further
Exactly,
notice from.
and we'll be talking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Sheffield.
Okay.
Okay, so I think, Mr. Mayor and council, we're at the point to be able to move forward. And I provided a memo, and for the sake of the public who, of course, are in attendance and who may be listening in, wanted to go over a couple of things that we've been able to put together in regards to establishing parking rates and moving forward with a vendor to manage this program for the town. So in regards to establishing parking rates to meet the needs of fulfilling the financial obligation of the Army Corps Storm Damage Mitigation Project, or our Federal Beach Nourishment Project, Parking rates should cover the difference of what the town currently budgets for the beach nourishment fund. Currently, the beach nourishment fund is made up of 3 separate revenue streams, which are the ad valorem tax or the property tax, contributions from Pender County, as well as accommodation tax revenue. In total, this equates to approximately $2.33 million annually, and as you know, approximately 1.55 million of that comes from real property tax from the citizens of Surf City, and then we do a accommodation tax transfer of 600,000. So the bulk of that really is borne through the town to fund our beach nourishment. By looking at debt capacity analysis to project out over the next 50 years, which is the term of the beach nourishment project, it has been determined that through the initial construction of the project, as well as the 6-year renourishment cycles, which we'll see approximately 7.3 of those over the life of the PPA and the contract, additional revenue must be realized to help offset the need to raise the ad valorem tax. Through the modeling, it has shown that approximately $700,000 minimum in additional revenue is needed annually to sustain the town and pay for the beach nourishment project. To estimate the $700,000 figure, basic assumptions were made. These assumptions include the number of available parking spaces, hourly and daily rates, number of hours per day parking will be charged, and how many days through the year parking would be enforced. By using a 3-hour and $15 day rate, it was estimated that the town could generate approximately $668,000 in net parking revenue annually. That does include citation or violation revenue that would be added on top of just the parking rate revenue that would come in. In comparison, if the daily rate were set at $20 a day, still keeping the $3 an hour rate consistent, the model would show that net revenue generated would be approximately $910,000. Understanding what is necessary to maintain our fiscal responsibility as it comes to the federal beach nourishment project, it would be recommended that council adopt a rate structure that will meet the minimum threshold, which equates to the $3 an hour and $20 a day rate structure. Now keep in mind, somebody would have to be at the beach more than 6 hours for that $20 a day. So 7 hours is going to be $21. That's a pretty full day at the beach. The capacity model includes, as we've talked about, having the financing side with the core, $13 million for the initial construction in order to maintain a fund reserve. We've established that as making sure that we have at minimum $5 million within our beach nourishment fund to cover ancillary costs associated with maintaining our beach. The town will pay back the $13 million over 30 years or earlier, but the cost of the remaining phases would be spread out over the next 44 years. And again, that 44, that number comes from the initial construction. We have a 6-year period, and then the first renourishment cycle would come into play. It is projected that the town would have to pay $15.6 million, 25% of the projected renourishment costs every 6 years for each phase of the project. The $15.6 million is a worst case scenario that was provided by the federal government, but our fiscal prudency, I think that that's something we have to be conservative on and look at that. The revenue required each year to cover the payout every 6 years, as well as our yearly debt service, would be a little over $3.033 million per year. As a reminder, we're at 2.33, so that's where that gap comes into play. The current dedicated revenue would not be enough to cover the anticipated cost that would be required every 6 years, as well as paying the yearly debt from the initial borrowing. The town would need another $700,000 as a minimum of dedicated revenue for the beach nourishment project to be financially sustainable over the 44 years beyond initial construction. As a reminder, when we entered into this process, we tried to look at other revenue generating programs that the town could take in to try and just provide options. Those things were additional room occupancy tax, which there's only one other place in the state that is allowed to do that. That's in the city of Charlotte for the NASCAR Museum. We looked at a potential luxury tax, which is not available through the General Assembly in the state, as well as looking at a food and beverage tax, which we were advised that would not be an option, essentially politically moving forward through lobbying arms and the General Assembly in general, looking at raising that or putting a dollar threshold or a percent threshold on all prepared food and beverages that would be produced within the town. So moving forward, council wanted to evaluate additional vendor opportunities or options. So evaluations had continued to determine the best suited vendor to implement the paid parking program for the town. The major factors included the ability to meet the parameters set through council policy on pricing, ease of access for residents and visitors, having a primary mobile delivery of service, upfront costs, and the ability to serve as an extension of the town while assisting patrons and enforcing the program equitably across the island, or excuse me, across the town. Based on those parameters, staff is respectfully recommending the selection of pivot parking. Pivot parking has demonstrated the ability to provide for a text-to-park function, as well as the ability to provide additional features through a citizen portal to allow for account maintenance, as well as the additional ability to produce a hurricane reentry process or program, which is a long-standing priority for the town. The text-to-park function will allow access to parking without the reliance of a smartphone and will not require any apps to download. However, if desired, an app is available that can help show available parking, directing visitors to parking availability within town. As this is not required to be able to park, it will take an individual to download the app to access those types of features. But for anybody that's just coming to the beach, their main source of validating their parking would be through a text-to-park function.
Which doesn't take an iPhone, right?
No, sir. Or an Android. It can be just through a general flip phone if that's people's mobile use.
Yes.
Regarding parking enforcement, pivot parking ambassadors will serve as an extension of the town in their execution of duties. They will be uniformed with town logo in high visibility colors to help serve as an assistance to those that may have difficulty in parking. It will be their duty to not only enforce the parking standards that the town has put in place with existing lots and on-street parking, but to also enforce non-compliant parking outside of the dedicated zones. That's something that we got a lot of questions about. If people are parking they're not only going to enforce what we have directed on a zone map for paid parking, they will be monitoring parking throughout town, and if violations are noted, enforcement actions will occur. For example, I put in here, someone's parked along side street outside of a zone, they will be subject to ticketing and fines. For the reasons stated above and by meeting the parameters established by the town, I am recommending that town council consider approving the selection of pivot parking to carry out the parking management for the town. I have included as an attachment to this memorandum the actual budget showing the fixed costs, gross revenues, as well as net operating income estimated to be returned to the town. That is what we have seen as option 2, which is the $3 an hour and $20 a day revenue generating model that is within your information. With that being said, I would respectfully request that council allow myself and legal counsel to work with the vendor for contract execution to be consistent with the terms that this council had generally agreed upon in prior deliberations, which was a 2-year term. with a potential to renew after evaluation of that term, and that we be able to move forward. There's going to be a lot of work to be done between now and April 1st. When we do roll this out, and there will be information that gets put out on how to park, how the program works, the back end side of the portal for our citizens to be able to validate their parking. We would also implement a grace period for enforcement so that we can make sure that people are understanding of the program, that the town is enforcing parking, because there certainly will be a learning curve, and we want to be as flexible as possible when we roll this program out. Enforcement is generally done through a DOT licensed golf cart with an LPR, or license plate recognition, attached to that golf cart. It's a instantaneous scan of license plates, and it's got a 98 to 99% accuracy for collecting the data, processing, and giving that parking ambassador the information that they need to do their job. The other option to that is through a handheld device, which lacks the accuracy that we would see through the mounted camera system, and then introduces a lot of potential user error or keying error when they're going through that process. So what you have in your packet, Stephanie had uploaded the amended rate schedule, is being consistent with what council has discussed on all parameters, except for the change in the daily rate to 20, the hourly rate remaining at $3, annual pass remaining at $250, with certain discounts built in for our active duty and retired military personnel, senior citizens, as well as folks that live within our ETJ to receive a 10% discount on the annual pass. On top of that, on the parking map, the pay-by-mail option would go away. That would be just a full-day parking lot for availability, as well as free parking available along Wilmington Avenue and North Topsail at the town-owned lot in that location. With this, ordinances come into play to effectuate the enforcement side of it. I would anticipate that once we get under contract and start working on our policies, that ordinances may be tweaked minorly moving forward. I did confer with legal counsel on civil penalties and how those are extracted, and how that is revenue generated to the town and not through the state process or goes back to schools. It is a revenue that goes back to the town, and the ordinance, I feel confident, is written in that format. And then the parking map, as we know, will be a fluid document in which this council will see many times as we continue to adjust that parking areas, bringing on potential new areas for parking, etc. So more than happy to answer any questions. I was provided a contract from another municipality in which the vendor works with to start looking at that. Legal counsel is familiar with that contract, and it would be our hopes, it would be my hope and my directive to have this executed very early next week. So I'll be more than happy to try to answer any questions that council has.
Yeah, I think he said he could start a soft opening in April, right?
Yes, sir. We're going to do everything in our power that we can to make sure that we can move forward as soon as possible.
Timing is directly dependent on going under contract.
Yes, sir.
So it's time sensitive.
So, do we have, anybody got any other questions?
I've got a couple comments.
Huh?
I've got a few comments, no questions.
Okay. All right.
I spoke, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead with your
Okay.
comment.
So I spoke briefly to you yesterday. I was short on time when we had the discussion in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And I followed up with a phone call to Kyle, but to bring everybody up to speed on what that discussion was, I had made a proposal to look at the increase in parking spaces, because 550 or whatever rough number that is, just simply is not enough capacity to handle parking, whether paid or unpaid. When we start telling people that they cannot park in the right-of-ways as they've been accustomed doing in the past years, I think it's going to have a second and third order of effect, and it's going to create more problems than solutions. People are going to be resourceful. They're going to look for alternate ways to park, and then we'll get into predatory towing and all those things that are going to come with. And I think that's going to look adversely to the town over time. So I had made a recommendation as we're looking at the selling of the property adjacent and with the old police department, if we want to refer to it as that. I think the value of that property was at about 1.3 million. And I said, why didn't we look at parking spaces there, as many as possible? And it'd be one lot that one vendor can simply look at instead of going around to 20 different locations. Possibly making these additional lots no kidding paid, as much as I'm against the idea, but I think if they were a premium lot, well done as far as aesthetically pleasing as much as possible, we would charge in that lot, or it'd be a parking deck, however we decided to get there. And I think Kyle brought up some creative ideas of how that could be a dual partnership with a contractor in the town to build the lot, and then have the other ones free. The ones that we're considering now as paid parking would be the free parking spaces that could be first come, first serve. As they say, the early bird gets the worm. Those would accommodate those that cannot afford to pay to visit the beach, while at the same time we still have a revenue stream. And I would rather, I think we owe $200,000 as the balance on that police department as far as the property is concerned. I would rather see us make $1 million a year on a property that we virtually already own than just make $1 million one time on a property that we have access to. So I don't know what the rush is, but if we would take the time to look at increasing capacity, having as much free parking as possible, it would potentially be a win-win for all, for our community, our neighbors who are concerned about having access to the beach. And I know we own the parking spaces, we don't own the beach, I get all of that, but it's at a time where we're in a pandemic, people are still suffering economically. I don't think it's a time to be taking money out of the pockets of those that are most impacted and vulnerable. So I would ask the council to consider increasing capacity to the most extent possible in order to fix the parking problem. And it's a capacity issue, whether it's paid or unpaid first, and then establish those additional parking spaces in order to increase the revenue that we're after. So I just want to at least put that out there for thought. That's all I have, Mayor.
Do we need to get a consensus on having Kyle move forward?
We need a motion.
No, we need a motion.
We need a motion to amend the ordinance to adopt the fee schedule, the parking map, and to move forward with the attorney's review on the parking contract. So there'll be 4 pieces to the motion.
What's the
I need an ordinance amendment, fee schedule, parking map, and vendor contract.
Can we take those one at a time? Just so.
One at a time.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is there
Which one you want to do for?
Of the 4, motion to amend the ordinance
I make a motion, we amend the ordinance
as described by the town manager.
as described by the town manager.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Okay.
A motion to approve these.
Wait a minute, opposed?
Oh, sorry. I apologize.
Okay, sorry. Okay, motion's carried.
A motion to approve the fee schedule as recommended by the town manager.
I make a motion to that effect.
I second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Same sign. Motion's carried.
A motion to adopt the original parking map as recommended by the town manager.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
Teresa, second. Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign.
Motion to select Pivot Parking as the town's parking vendor and to enter into a contract with Pivot for a term not to exceed 2 years based on town manager and town attorney's final review of the contract.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed?
Anything else?
Same. Okay, motion carried.
You need me to- I believe that's it, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll get it for you.
Okay.
You said with pivot parking based on the town attorney review?
And town manager review. So the last motion, just so we're clear, Kyle and I will negotiate, as Kyle expressed, the terms of the contract with Pivot, and that'll allow Kyle to execute it. That motion will allow Kyle to execute it without having to wait for another meeting.
Yes.
And that way we
Okay.
can get them started
Yeah.
quicker and to meet earlier launch date. Mr. Brewer, you have anything to
No, sir,
clarify?
Mr. Attorney.
Okay. Is that everything?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Next on the agenda is 2021 priorities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is no action item necessary for this, but really to start thinking about what priorities in which you want me to work on and me working with you collectively on. We met back in January of 2020 and looked at, excuse me, and developed priorities from that meeting, and those priorities, excuse me, were to look at bike and ped implementation, what are we doing with tourism and tourism advertising. There was a desire for a dump truck for town. The general priority of parking had come up last year, business registration program, water and sewer infrastructure, beach nourishment, and then looking at additional revenue streams. This is going to sound sort of repetitious as we've talked about these, and I gave you an update January 15th on some of those prior priorities that we had set. So looking at real quick on the additional revenue streams, as I had previously mentioned, the town was able to do its investigation and really move forward on things that we could and not move forward on things that we knew that there was major roadblocks on. The room occupancy tax is one that's still floating around. That's one thing that the 3 towns on the island are generally consistent on in trying to see what we can do in the General Assembly to tie that room occupancy tax back to a specific project. Again, that's generally how things are probably going to get done, is we don't have a additional percentage on room occupancy tax just because we want more money for general government. So if we can tie that back to beach nourishment and coastal issues, we feel, working with our TISPC lobbyist, that's something that could be favorable potentially moving forward. The beach nourishment, as we know, we've been working on this all year with the Army Corps project and meeting some of the milestones that we need to meet to make sure that we're prepared to execute a project partnership agreement, which as of Wednesday, we should see that by the end of March. Is their time frame on execution of that.
Kyle?
Yes, sir.
Before you get further, for the room occupancy tax?
Yes, sir.
Is that gonna make it before the assembly this time around?
We don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of discussion that has to happen on the back end, and I believe that Connie Wilson is one that's going to take the lead on that.
That's an increase of 1%?
1%, so we currently have 6, it would potentially go to 7.
Well, would that create an additional revenue? Of how much potentially?
Dave, where's my Dave at? Do you know what a 1% on a combination tax?
While you look at it, that's the only question I have.
Yeah.
Go ahead, thank you.
It wouldn't, it's, I don't want to say minimal, because $100,000 is still a good chunk of change, but my estimate would probably be about $100,000 on that.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Water and sewer infrastructure, as this council knows and understands, the capacity projects that we are currently working on. We have teed up what feels like 100 projects and have continued to narrow those down and narrow down our focus based on things that we can move forward with. As you know, we've got a Headworks project which is indirectly tied to it that we awarded a contract on and moving forward with. Really seriously looking at high rate infiltration. And then the last piece of that is starting to work on a master plan and having the potential discharge permit for long-term sustainability on sewer. Mr. McCall?
I just based off of collecting about 1.4 million a year. We're going to trend higher this year.
Yeah.
Historically, the number. Come out to an additional $233,000.
230.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes. So those are things that we'll keep an eye on and can certainly give updates on. So that's the water and sewer side of it. Business registration, I had tasked our prior finance director with this, so this project did kind of slide down. Dave has done a tremendous job at coming in, reconciling the books and making sure that we're up to date on our financial needs, and we've certainly talked about business registration. We're tying this into the full ordinance rewrite that we're working on right now, and feel like a January 1, 2022 would be an appropriate time frame to implement that program. Again, it's not a revenue generating program. This is a registration, and the way that the law states is that we can't use it for revenue generation, which is not our priority. It's really to have a registration of who's doing business in town for fire code compliance, building code compliance, zoning compliance, things of that nature. When we have states of emergency, sometimes there's a need to understand, what's going on within town so that we can reach out to those partners, and it would be a repository that we would work on. The parking, as we have, I don't want to say belabored, because we have gone through a lot of very quality discussion on this, but that is going to be implemented. The dump truck issue, we have looked at options. Mr. Merritt, Mr. Price have been invaluable in working with on that to do evaluations on this. We really feel like having the necessary equipment and assets will be able to assist us in providing a much higher service delivery to our citizens, just simply through vegetative debris pickup. That can come through the form of very minor storm debris pickup, as well as what the town has historically done through biannual cycles of vegetative debris, and really looking at bringing that in-house. Can we do that on a more frequent basis, or even looking at an on-demand model where there's a service request from a citizen? We queue that into a work order system, but again, we're continuing to work on that, evaluate it, and hope to bring that forward.
And if they got the equipment, it'd be a lot more feasible for them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And again, as I mentioned, what we wanted to do was to provide some objective reasonings for recommendations. Is I asked Price, give me a bid. Even as an internal staff, what would this cost the town as if you were a private entity submitting a bid on this project, and what that would look like. And we do really feel like we will be able to see cost savings even with equipment acquisition, looking at staff time and equipment costs, et cetera, gas, all that. And then the bike and ped implementation, as Chad had mentioned before, and as I have discussed with staff is we need to be focused on our bike and ped plan that the town had adopted several years ago. We will see a fairly substantial increase, working with the JH-BATS and development project across the street to parlay some of the sidewalk infrastructure to come down. But then, as Mr. Merritt had mentioned earlier, a focus on our central business district. We do feel like there's some infill projects that would be simple projects to complete but have a high impact. So he will be challenged to make sure that the remainder, as you saw with the paving contract, will take out a little bit of that sidewalk, but to make sure that we use those funds to implement that program to do what we can through the end of this fiscal year. So those were just a brief recap on 2020 priorities. And what I've done and what I'll intend on doing is keeping these all together from year to year to year, so we can always go back and look at what were those priorities that we said in 8 years ago. Where are we at with that? Keeping notes as to why we weren't able to proceed with a certain project, because the priority is let's do the investigation, let's execute if we can. If there's barriers to that, then maybe we regroup. So priorities 2021, I do present to you as draft. I really would hope that we can do some additional work between now and our March work session to come up with your ideas. What as the elected leaders of the town and working with your constituents, what you feel priorities will be moving forward in 2021. So a lot of these I kept fairly consistent because we can't always complete something within that year. So what I have, bike and ped implementation, again, I think is going to be an ongoing thing for a growing town that we have, is to focus again on the small infill projects in the CBD, and then prepare plan to move forward on the town greenway, which I think has been a long-standing priority for the town citizens and for council to do that. I know that there's already some preliminary discussion going on internally, looking at some very hypothetical routes in which we can really make a connection from our mainland to our island, keeping that harmonious for not only our citizens but our visitors as well. Those are very highly sought out things that people desire when they potentially even go on vacation. It's not always every day sitting on the beach. They might want to get out, ride their bike, and we want to provide that opportunity. Water and sewer infrastructure, getting a little bit more focused in on this, is implementing the interlocal agreement with Pender County. As we have discussed, this will really trigger the master plan process of looking forward with a 40 and 50-year solutions, so that we can have confidence in growing our town and having some basic standards in place, agreed upon terms as we continue our partnership with the county and their water and sewer district, and working independently but also collectively together. This will partner us with the county for many years to come. The right-of-way enforcement program, I put this on here because I know this is something that we do want to address, whether that's this year upcoming or if it's going to be future year. It's something that I would love feedback on and direction from council on. Parking, again, I think it is certainly understood that this is going to be an ongoing project in which the town is going to have to work on. This is only the beginning, I would say, in our parking management for the town. It's not just Surf City. As we started this process, demand for the beach, visiting the beach is only going to increase with our increased population outside of city limits as well as within city limits. We have a tremendously high growth rate in our surrounding communities, Hampstead, Holly Ridge, Sneads Ferry, everywhere you look, and as I've likened it, we are under construction. This region is under construction. and I would anticipate seeing those growth trends continue consistently into years forward. So it will be important that we continue to focus on parking capacities throughout town. And again, I put in here to be broad additional surface parking lots. Do we want to look at parking decks, et cetera? But if this is a priority for council, we can have broad enough direction to where I can look at multiple options moving forward and bring those back to council. Another major project that we hope to see move forward is going to be the Mainland Park project. So overseeing the development of that new Mainland Park project, of course, with Mr. Merritt on that, should be a priority of the town. Again, I already touched on this, the vegetative debris. Mr. Horn is working on our debris management plan to really bring that into 3 levels of action in which the town would see. Level 1, I would say is, that's going to bring in our debris contractor. It's going to be an upfront cost that we have reimbursable through FEMA, but it's not something that town forces are going to be able to execute. Level 2, and what we're working on right now is delineating a secondary tier of implementing our debris contractor again. But then most likely that's going to be a smaller type project that they would subcontract with probably a more localized company, but still be under the auspice of our existing contract with our current vendor on that. And then the level 3 is, what if we do have an ice storm? We've got a very small tropical storm, God forbid just a tornado or a windstorm. The hazards are seemingly endless as we looked at our hazard mitigation plan presentation earlier, but that's utilizing some of the equipment procurement that you will most likely see in our recommendation with the upcoming fiscal year budget, is procuring some additional resources necessary. I can't say how much of a good job our staff did with responding to the post-Isaias debris program, but we are taking 2 departments offline for essentially 2 weeks to do that kind of work. And then as we go through the PA side of FEMA reimbursement, it becomes much more of a laborious task outside of just picking up debris and disposing of it than I think the town is equipped to handle. That's taking GPS coordinates of every single pile, taking pictures, having inspectors that follow those trucks, and when they dump, doing the tickets, etc. It is, I don't want to say it's not worth our time, but there becomes a breaking point where we say operationally it just is not worth our time to do those types of things. So that's kind of what the level 2 would be. So we do think that the options for dump trucks and chippers are going to be multi-beneficial outside of just our scheduled debris pickup, outside of our storm debris management, but going and getting our own material as opposed to paying for transportation costs and markup on that, sharing that equipment amongst fields and grounds, amongst utilities, having that sense of ownership, and then looking at potentially, how can we do this more efficiently? Do we purchase a chipper? I think we've got tremendous opportunity on our new Mainland Park project for, a pretty awesome trail system. Can we use mulch for that? Can we use mulch for other projects around town? We just have more needs, I think, as we grow for these types of things, and really bringing that back into the community, and maybe at some point we're selling mulch. I don't know what that would look like, but those are some of the things that we're looking at internally to execute and carry forward for you. On the personnel side, preparing a pay and classification study for all positions within the town. Of course, utilizing a third-party resource for this. It's been quite some time since the town has really looked at all positions within town. what the grades are, what the FLSA classification on exemption and non-exemption, and how that really looks for all employees within the town. So we would be looking at executing that in the upcoming year. Beach nourishment, I think we're going to have another slew of additional obligations on our hand with this beach nourishment project. That includes reconstructing crossovers and access locations and all that other stuff that's going to go along with it, and it's going to be important that that maintains a priority of the town. I think those are unsaid, or those don't need to be written down, but I think it's important to make sure that we are keeping that on top of our radar. Solid waste, again, this is something that has such a high impact to the town, and looking at our current contract will expire June 2022. But I don't want to wait till March prior to that June to start thinking about it. I think this warrants a lot of discussion on potential service delivery, cost to the town, what current states of recycling costs, etc. How can we provide a more value-added benefit to the community? What is important? How can we enforce trash cart violations, or do we need to look at another model for roll down and roll back? I've learned a ton about trash over the last year, and I do think that this is something that we do need to focus on moving forward, so that we're prepared to set new terms on what that will look like and who the vendor might be. And then last but certainly not least is something that's going to be very impactful for the town is updating our development regulations that will coincide with the comprehensive plan. What that comprehensive plan will do is set policy and direction as to how we want the town to look over the next 30 and 40 years. The primary implementation tool to that is updating your development regulations. So how do we want a certain area to look? How do we want a certain area to function? You effectuate that through development regulations. So you go from policy to implementation on that, plus other things within that plan will be beneficial to the town. So I do present that those 10 items as preliminary and draft priorities. Again, this will stay within your folder so that you can continue to look at that, think upon those items, and then when we come back for our March work session, we're prepared to adopt these as well as set priorities on them. So prioritize within the priorities so that I'm making sure that I'm staying focused, as well as carrying that forward in execution through our department heads and their staff, because it'll be important that they're staying on track, and they are doing a good job at that right now. So that's what I got for you, Mr. Mayor, on the priorities moving forward.
I appreciate it. We still got a lot of work to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is not all encompassing of the good work that we will continue to do, but really sets forth just some higher level, because as I meet with department heads for their evaluations, we will set goals individually within departments that may not fall directly under this priority, but more of a work plan priority for them.
Right.
I see the chief out of the corner of my eye, so things like the 5-year strategic plan, those are going to fall under some department head evaluations and goal setting that we will do internally.
Okay. And then when are we going to meet and let the different departments present their?
I think those will be in March according to our schedule. I'll go back and look at that calendar, but I know that they're already gearing up for that and preparing for that. Their line item budgets will be due next Friday.
Right.
So once we've looked at that, reviewed it, off the top of my head, again, I'm pretty sure it's that March work session. Well, we'll bring them individually for 15, 20 minutes to kind of go over, or longer if we need to, ask questions, go over what you're presenting, any major increases from last year, major decreases, so that you have a thorough understanding of the line item budgets for each department moving forward.
Right. Okay, has anybody got any questions, Kyle, on any of this?
Good job, thank you.
Thank you. And if there's things that, you want to share with me, I will be happy to keep those off to the side. I would just say, copy your fellow council persons on that correspondence, but, we're not going to deliberate over email, but, I would say just if you do want to submit some priorities, then
right.
Please copy everybody on that.
Okay. All right, have we got anything else?
I do have one thing. It's not on the agenda. It is internal, just personnel, not closed session by any means, but Stephanie and I have completed our self-evaluations. That is what is in your manila folder. Those are printed out for you. I'd ask that you go through those, but also we have put in your council agendas the blank evaluation forms. So Mayor Pro-Tem Fowler will be the liaison to the evaluation process, and I would ask that you communicate with Mr. Fowler on that. But our intention would be to go into closed session at our regular council meeting, March 2nd. Individually, meeting with Stephanie and then myself separately to go over your evaluation of our performance and certainly things that we can improve upon for next year. So we do respectfully submit those to you so that you can take a look at those and have a baseline of evaluation. I always think this is an important process, and would certainly ask that you take the time to look at those. But Mr. Fowler will be your point of contact on that.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Anything?
can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Just going back over your list, I feel like over the past year, we have become extremely organized. It's just a good feeling to feel like you got a list of things that you want to do and things that have been accomplished and those to be accomplished. Just looking when you were talking about our March meeting, some things that we had discussed in a previous workshop was when we get ready to sit down to do the personnel pay study by the third party, I would like to recommend that we do an HR audit before we do the pay study, just to make sure that we are where other towns are with the number of employees per department and so forth. And when we sit down to do the budget, I think we had talked about when we meet with each department to have a list on each department as far as the breakdown of full-time, part-time employees, a list of their inventory, a list of their contracts, inside, not necessarily like the contract, but a list of contracts that are associated with each department.
Yeah, with their budget submission, they will have a cover sheet that will document a lot of that information, so that when we give to you, I'm just thinking of last year, and I've got this minuscule type out, but we will prepare that and present that to you with that cover sheet, and then to be able to go through each line item. And that cover sheet, as communicated back to department heads, will contain not desks and chairs inventory, but major asset inventories, vehicles, equipment, just some of the larger things that each department kind of owns. And we have some more administrative heavy departments that aren't going to have a lot of that stuff, but I think of utilities, field and grounds, fire, police, et cetera, are going to have a lot of the bulk of those items. So we will have that for you.
And that includes the list of employees, not particularly named, but positions.
Yep.
and description.
Yep, so,
Job description.
as you, as Mr. Mayor had put in his packets or had presented to you, just organizational charts and changes and, things like that, we can prepare it in that type of, format. This is just one half of his department, but it gives you a good snapshot as to, what the hierarchy within a department is and kind of, what those positions are. And then, of course, we have position descriptions for each position within town, so.
Okay. All right. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes.
Like that? Okay. All right. Anybody else got anything else they want to bring to the board? Okay, Mr. Eads, you got anything you need to present to us?
The parking's not been an easy thing to tackle, and I believe we're moving in the right direction.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Have a good one, Jeremy.
It'd be hard to